So without further ado, welcome once again. Today we're going to be talking about ChatGPT and the best use cases for it and how to really utilize it. And I'm going to talk a little bit about, what is it, how is it being used nowadays? How can you use it in your regular day, regular everyday life? And we'll go from there. So let's just get started. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the agenda for today. So I'll just give you a brief introduction. And then we're going to talk about exactly what is ChatGPT, especially if you haven't heard of it right now. And basically, a lot of today's talk, I want to walk through different examples of how you can use it in your everyday life. I've broken this down into level 1, level 2, level 3. Level 1, meaning these are very simple examples that, for very basic questions. Level 2 is how to utilize it into some situations that you might not have thought of. And then 3 are kind of the most powerful examples of how this is being used that kind of really has shocked the world and shocked me for anything. We're going to touch a little bit of the little history of it and kind of walk through like how to make an effective query. And at the end, we'll do questions and answers. As we go through on the presentation, if you have any questions, just put them in the chat and we'll break throughout just to answer the questions as we go on. Sound good? Okay. So just as a kind of note of who is here, if you took the RSVP form, I asked the question of where are you along your education journey? And kind of I wanted to see where, what is the audience like? So as you can see, a lot of folks here have graduated college and are working full time. So a lot of the examples I might give are going to be tailored to that group, but that's not to say that if you're in high school, college, or in any of the other groups that we've mentioned, a lot of these examples will be very applicable to you as well. So, but just for context, I always like data. So this is in this. If you are new here to MYL, if you got this Zoom through just a friend or someone in your school or workplace, it's MYL. So MYL is the Massachusetts Youth Leadership Foundation. We're a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to helping high school students and college students in their age with providing the skills, opportunities, and programming to have positive change in their communities. Our main audience is high school sophomores, but over the years, we've kind of expanded to have programming for high school seniors, college students, and even, people that have just graduated college and so on and so forth. Our organization is filled with a lot of really impressive alumni. There's been lawyers, doctors. I'll even throw Olivia, who is our VP. She just got into graduate school at Harvard. So there's a lot of really impressive people here. And so part of this idea was to allow a space in these Zoom calls, in these alumni talks, where alumni can share some of their biggest passions, ideas, and knowledge to the rest of the world. So if you enjoyed today's talk, we're going to have many talks moving forward with different subjects. And if you're an alumni yourself and want to talk about some particular subject that you like, please don't feel free to reach out to us. We'll be happy to have you on. So without further ado, who am I? So my name is Cristian Bedoya. I am the president of the board of directors for MYL. I went to MassStar, our main conference for high school sophomores, back in 2008. And ever since then have been volunteering in the organization and have been volunteering, coming back to the conference and helping to put out different programming. When I was in college, I worked on doing stuff for high school students. And now that I'm in my adult life, I'm trying to put more programming for folks who are in college or recently out of college. So aside from all of that, in my real life, outside of my volunteer work with MYL, I'm a software engineer. So I ended up going to Northwestern University out in Chicago. It's not Northeastern, which is usually the distinction I usually make for everyone in Boston. So I went to Northwestern, it's out in Chicago, and I ended up doing my bachelor's and my master's in computer engineering. And so that's all to say that ever since I was a little kid, I was really interested in electronics and software and how to really make the most of this technology that was ever growing at the time. Since then, I've been doing 7 years of software experience. I've worked at companies like Intel, Boeing, and Northrop Grumman. And everything we're about to talk today is all about machine learning and AI. And at these companies, while I don't directly work with these machine learning algorithms, AI and machine learning has always been kind of like a big fascination for me. In fact, when I was doing my master's, I ended up doing a concentration in processors, but the second thing that I wanted to do was machine learning. And I think it was just the way the classes were timed that I ended up saying, okay, let me just do processors. But sometimes I'm like, oh, what would it have been like to have like that full concentration in machine learning? So, but that's all to say, I'm really passionate about this topic. I'm really happy to be here, answer any questions, and get to tell you a little bit more about what is all this AI stuff that we're talking about. Okay, so so first, what is ChatGPT? So if you are new to all this, basically ChatGPT, it's an artificial intelligent chatbot. It's created by a company called OpenAI, which stands for Open Artificial Intelligence, and which was actually started by a bunch of ex-Google employees back in 2015. And I mentioned this just because when ChatGPT came about, Google has gotten really scared of like, wow, this thing is really powerful. We might lose our business. So the irony, there's a little bit more irony in that as well as we talk through the presentation. But essentially, it's a chatbot. It's just a text platform, and you can use it to ask any type of question. And we're going to be going through several different examples. But just so you can get an idea, it's like, hey, can you help me find a recipe for for breakfast using avocados and eggs, something like that. Can you help me write an email? Can you help me find travel locations? And again, we're going to be looking at these examples. But it's a really cool tool that allows you to just easily you can ask questions and be able to get a very simple example. It's completely free to use. And I think this is one of the big misconceptions. The version that's out there right now, it's completely free. OpenAI has come out with a newer version that you do have to pay for, but honestly, the free version is good enough, and it's the one that we're going to be looking at today. It's open for anyone to use. So all you really need to do, and we're going to go through this, is just open up an account. And even that, you can use your Gmail account and be able to log in through that. You don't need any coding experience or any knowledge of any kind of software background. You will see that you can just simply ask it questions and be able to get the response you want. One thing to note is that this has been trained from data from the internet all the way up to 2021. So if you ask it about any questions regarding 2022 or 2023, it's not going to know what is going on. And we're going to cover why that is. A lot of this has been in the works for many years, but it was really pioneered, again, by Google's artificial intelligence research team. And we're going to talk about how basically some of their work ended up being into this great technology, these large language models and transformers, which I'll explain exactly what those mean. Okay, biggest thing I would like to say here is use this tool to help you. Use it as a helper. This tool is meant for helping you to get through your everyday life and those tasks that you're like, I don't know exactly how to do this. I need some help. Please don't use this to create work that is not your own and then pass it off as your own. Biggest example of this is that throughout schools and high schools and colleges, teachers and professors are already catching that, hey, someone wrote an English essay that is not, that wasn't generated by the student. It was clearly made by AI. For one, I will say that as these AI tools are progressing, an equivalent set of tools that are made to predict if this was written by AI are also being developed. And ironically, they're also AI tools. So as you're kind of going through this, you'll see that there's a lot of really cool examples that it writes really well. But honestly, like I will say, as someone who has gone through my college career and like work career, it is not going to do you any well to just copyright and plagiarize an essay from using an AI tool. Use this to help you find ideas, to help you get started, but ultimately, this is not what you should be using to plagiarize. And you'll start to see actually ChatGPT and OpenAI have started to really fine-tune this tool to kind of say, hey, be warned, don't use this. We completely condone any form of plagiarism in here, but I wanted to get that right off the bat. Okay. Before we jump in, I wanted to kind of explain a little bit about how is this different from Google? Like we're all used to Googling something, and you just type in, okay, weather today or whatever. So Google, the difference between this and Google is that Google is already looking at the internet and it helps you find what it already has been created. If you're trying to find an article of like, how do I set up my iPhone to, make a better battery, or to like, what settings on my iPhone do I change so that my battery's better? And you can Google it and you'll probably find someone wrote an article that it gives you step-by-step instructions. When you Google something, it's just allowing you to go through and find where in the internet is there a page that does this. ChatGPT, on the other hand, is not really searching for something that's already out there. It's actually creating it on the spot. And that's where the G comes in ChatGPT. It's generative. And we're going to talk about what does the P and the T stand for. But basically, it's saying, hey, this is what basically ChatGPT gives you. It's a generated response. It's something that if you were to copy and paste into Google, you won't find it anywhere. Like it's been made on the spot. And the beauty of this, I think, is that over the years, we've been trained as humans to just like use Google in certain ways. Like you have to use certain keywords, you have to use certain techniques, like find PDF and blah, blah, blah. With ChatGPT, it's a much more like natural conversation. It's like, hey, can you help me find a place to eat in Los Angeles? Okay, yeah, sure. And then here you go. Versus like you having to Google best places to eat in Los Angeles, and then I have to scroll through a bunch of articles and finding out exactly where you need to go. Okay, so without further ado, let's step into our first set of examples for level 1. So I'm gonna just jump in and I'm gonna get rid of this. So as you can see, the site that you will need to go to is called chat.openai.com/chat, and we'll put a link to this into some of the slides. I'm already logged in, but just to give you if you were a first-time user, we'll just do chat OpenAI. If you're a first-time user, you're probably going to be greeted with a page like this, and so you'll be greeted, hey, if you don't have an account, you can sign up for an account, and you can create an account, and you'll be able to log in with it. If you have a Google account or a Microsoft account, you can just click through that, and then you would just be signing in with just like whatever account you have. Because I'm already signed in, it just goes straight to this page. And this page goes to a couple different, as you see in this page, it already tells you a little bit about it. It says, here's some examples of what you can type in. Explain quantum computing in simple terms. Any creative ideas for a 10-year-old's birthday party? It tells you a little bit about its capabilities. It's really cool that it memorizes everything you've said. So like you can go look back and see if you needed help with something again. And you can ask follow-up questions in it. And then finally, it tells you its limitations. Like it's still learning. It's still kind of getting what is correct and what's wrong. And it's, again, like I mentioned, limited to the world of knowledge, after 2021. So I'm going to say, okay, one of the very first basic examples is how you can use it to write emails. So I'm just going to have it write, can you help me write an email asking my boss for a raise? And so as you can see, one is very friendly. It's like, of course, I would like to help you to write an email. And it starts writing your email right then and there. And so it says, dear boss, I hope this email finds you well. I'm writing to request a salary review for my current position at X company. And then it goes into kind of just a very nice way of saying, hey, we've talked before and I've made significant contributions to the success of the team and as the organization as a whole. And then it goes very well into just putting your thoughts in a really nice way. And as I reflect on my current responsibilities and contributions, I believe my compensation would be aligned with market value and so on and so forth. Again, this is, you should use this as a starting point. for this type of thing, like, how do you ask? It's really tough to like ask your boss for a raise. This is the perfect tool to say, okay, I need some good verbiage. And so it's always nice to just use this as a starting point, like to give you a really, salary. So to give you a really important way to start. And as you'll see here, this is just exactly what I was talking about. ChatGPT already is putting and telling you, hey, it's important to customize the email to your own situation and be specific about your contributions. Remember to proofread your email and grammatical and spelling errors and so on and so forth. And so it also gives you, be prepared to provide supporting evidence for your requests, such as performance reviews, data on your accomplishments, and market research on comparable salaries and regions. This is ChatGPT's way of saying, hey, here's a template. You can get started with this, but hey, keep in mind these things. I'm not going to help you with this part. Proofread your email for any grammatical or spelling errors. And that's the beauty of all this, is that it's giving you like a really nice personalized template. But then you can always, and then it also gives you kind of like, hey, these are also things you need to consider. Let's see. So one thing that we've had to do a lot in our organization is ask donors for money. So we're a nonprofit, so we're always constantly fundraising. So I remember having to write an email, and saying, can you help me? So I am a leader of a nonprofit organization that helps high school students. Can you help me write an email asking a donor nicely for funds for our upcoming conference? So a couple of things to keep in mind here. The more specific you are, the better your responses will be. So in this example, I gave a very specific prompt that said, I am one of the leaders in the nonprofit. It's for this if it's for this group, and what do I exactly want out of this email? And it's specifically in the tone. So it gives you, hey, I hope this email finds you well in specific nonprofit organization. I'm reaching out to you kindly, request for your support for upcoming high school conference, which is scheduled to take place on X and so forth. And I'm not going to go through the whole thing, but again, just as it gives you a really nice template, and things that sometimes we always forget to talk about, like, oh yeah, we have your tax deductible donation, and we have, as someone that works for the nonprofit, we know that we have that documentation, but we always forget it, like, oh yeah, we got to make sure to include it. And again, this kind of gives you a sense of, hey, you can personalize your email. You personalize your email with specific details. Make sure to provide clear information and make sure to kind of give you exactly what you need. So this is kind of like I've used this a lot to kind of help me get started, especially again, asking for donors. It's always I am always struggling with the best wording, and this has been one of the best tools to find the best kind of form to do this. I'm going to pause right there for a little bit in case there are any questions in the audience about this specific example. Okay, so I'm going to just keep going. So one of the other really good ways is for some creative ideas. So let's say I asked it, I'm going to ask it, I have it here actually. So this will be, I asked it, I'm a high school senior and I want to ask a girl out to the prom. How should I go about it? And this is a way to just give you creative ideas for you to go about it. So first off, it says, hey, I'm an AI language model. I can suggest a few ideas. And it says to kind of just like parts, things to keep in mind, plan ahead, be confident, respect your decision. What are some creative ways to do this? And so there's some ideas about a scavenger hunt, custom proposal cookies, a flash mob. I'll be honest, I very simply went up to the girl and she was a really good friend and just asked her out, but a lot of these would have been pretty cool. I did ask it, hey, can you give me some more ideas? And so then it talks about karaoke night, proposal balloons, proposal video, and so on and so forth. And then even I'll say like, okay, this was a lot. So I asked it, can you give me some ideas that are a little bit more simple? And so that's where I kind of like, okay, yeah, here, you can just do a balloon message, you can do a candy note, and so on and so forth. So one thing I wanted to show here, two things I wanted to show is one, it can be very creative to the point where like some of these things I would have thought of. And two, you can ask it like, can you give me something simpler? Can you something simpler to implement, and so on and so forth. I'll do one more before we jump back. You can ask it, you can ask it to help you plan your trip. So let's say I am traveling to Colombia in August. Where should I go, and what are some things I can do there? So it can start talking about Colombia, and then recommendations for places to visit. Again, these are things that you could Google, but the problem is that you're probably going to find like tens of thousands of articles that kind of talk about the same cities or the same kind of locations. I've used this to plan a recent trip to Vancouver, and I know others that have recently planned a trip to Italy using this tool. So it gives you exactly, hey, here's the city, here's what it's known for, here's some places to do. And so you can use this for probably any part in the world and kind of give you a very nice, clean outlook on everything. Okay, so where we go from here? So I think it's important to understand a little bit of how we got here, to kind of like, why is this such a big thing nowadays? Like, why is everyone talking about ChatGPT? Why do you see it? Why do you see AI in the news, and so on and so forth? So, and so here's a little bit of a model that I'll give a very high level overview. Basically, all this technology that we see of like, software that can like generate stuff, all of that has been trained by humans. So the way all this works is that over time, so machine learning has existed for like 50 plus years. Like people have been developing these pieces of software, and I'll totally admit, machine learning, a lot of the study, you might think it's all software. Actually, a lot of it is like math and statistics. Like in my machine learning classes at Northwestern, 75% of it was like math and statistics, 25% was actual coding. A lot of it is really just a bunch of math, a bunch of statistical models that predict what is correct. So what happens is that you create some software that has some mathematical model, that it's predicting stuff. You give it a bunch of data, so a bunch of examples of the data. And basically there's a training exercise that says, hey, this data is correct. So biggest example that's out there is that there was this big exercise of like, here's a bunch of pictures of cats and dogs. And the human would say, okay, this is a cat, this picture's a cat, this picture's a dog. And then the mathematical model is like looking at this data and analyzing the picture into like bits and pieces, and saying, okay, this is a cat, this is a dog. You feed it to this larger algorithm that's kind of doing most of the processing. And then afterwards, it spits out what it thinks. Basically, afterwards, it spits out what it thinks is a cat. And then there's a human person that says, yep, that is a cat or not. And so basically, there's kind of like two forms. One, this training exercise, you're just feeding it a bunch of pictures of cats and dogs. You're being trained so that the next time that someone feeds it a different picture of a cat, then it will say, okay, I think I know what it is. This is a dog. And if it's a dog, then there's an actual manual human that says, nope, that is not a dog. Try again. let's adjust the model a little bit. Essentially, all these little models have like little dials. Think of it as like if you're tweaking little parts of an engine, like or like basically, let's say you're thinking of it as like how you are going to the shower and you say, this is too hot. I am going to lower the temperature a bit. So then let's lower the temperature a bit. And it's like, no, this is too cold. Let me up this temperature. And so there's a constant process of like giving it more data, trying it again, validating. This is a cat. Okay, let's try that again. This is indeed a cat. And then let's try that again. Oh, this is a dog. Let's tweak this, and so on and so forth. That is the basic way all this works. It's basically just a lot of math and a lot of like refinement in the process. So how did we get here? And this is where it's kind of really, I think, funny and ironic. So basically in 2017, Google published this research paper called Attention is All You Need. And this was made by a bunch of Google's artificial intelligence team. And that basically kind of said, hey, we found a new type of model called a transformer based on self-attention mechanism. And I'm not going to go into self-attention mechanism. Frankly, I totally don't understand it right now either. But basically, a lot of it was a brand new model that can be fed into this diagram. So it's like, hey, we found this new model. It seems to be working for us. Here's a paper explaining how to use it. And then OpenAI was like, let's use this and see what we can come up with it. And to remind you, OpenAI was founded by a bunch of ex-Google employees. It had already existed for 2 years. And so when this paper came along, it was just like the jackpot. What this new model allowed was that it allowed for more parallelization. So you can do a lot more work at the same time, and thus allowing for faster training times, meaning you can go through this loop faster, and you can feed in more data and go through this. So ironically, it was really this paper that propelled OpenAI to just take it to the next level. So what followed up is that then you have this transformer model that Google created, and then Google came up with its first implementation of GPT. And essentially it said, hey, okay, created this system with just a little bit of data. And then, okay, this is good. Then they created a little bit, it trained it with more data, and then it created a second version, and then its third version. And so all of this was going on in 2018, 2019, throughout the pandemic, until 2022, when they were like, okay, we really like where we are at right now. Let's make a way for people to use it, like interactively, AKA a website, and then release it to the public. You can kind of think of all this as like how Pokemon's evolve. If you think about it, ChatGPT 1, it was this very weak model that could only do a little bit of things. Yes, it can help you out, but it really needed a lot of training. It needed more data. It needed to win more fights in order for you to just be able to then become the next level in the ChatGPT world. And so at this point, hey, this is a really good model. We're winning a lot of battles where it's giving us the data that we want. And now we're in the form of ChatGPT 3 or ChatGPT 3.5, which is only just slightly different from that. And you know what? We have Charizard. Charizard, yeah, this is the guy that's going to help us, win all the battles. And like now we can take it out to the public. It really is kind of like going and just continuously training and moving alongside that. And just to put everything to perspective, and I'm not going to go through this very complicated picture because really, you can go to OpenAI's website and it walks through this in a much more detailed form. But basically, ChatGPT is broken up into two parts. The first part is just a bunch of code that is optimized to translate what you asked. And so like the input that you're giving it, there's a bunch of code that is like used to translate it. And then all of that is fed into a bunch of code that is used to come up with the answer that you asked. So for example, when we asked it to say, hey, can you help me write an email to my boss about a raise? This set of code is able to translate that verb into saying, hey, you're asking me to write an email to your boss and then about money. And then it goes into this loop of, okay, I already know these things. Let me try to figure out how to do it. What's interesting to think about is that first part, that takes about a year to train. This second part takes about half a year to train, which is why, if you think back of why ChatGPT is only available for information up to 2021, it's because they stopped taking data 2021, I think mid-year or so, and started taking a year and a year and a half to do all this, so that then it could be released. And so that then it could be released in late 2022. Obviously, there was some like parallelization, right? This is how this became so big. But that's why we only have data up until 2021. And just to kind of put it all into perspective, we talked about generative, right? Generative is it's created on a spot. Pre-trained, it's meaning that it's this side right here, there's already some training going on here. But here is like where the major training happens. So that's where it's like, hey, here's part one, I'm being pre-trained. And so then this part, this entire model is the transformer model. That is what like Google kind of put together. So all of this is to say, this has been in the works for a couple of years. We as the public have only seen this much, but it's been evolving ever since, literally evolving ever since 2017 and beyond. And again, Google right now is kind of saying, whoa, how do we compete with ChatGPT? Frankly, I believe that it was all due to Google. So without further ado, before we go into some examples, I will take a pause right there because that was a really long rant. Cool. And I love that I'm seeing in the chat, my 7-year-old just picked up the Pokemon analogy. Great. I'm hoping that did help. And this presentation makes AI understandable. Awesome. Okay, so we have a couple more minutes. I wanted to make sure we stop around 9 o'clock. So I'm just going to walk through some more examples of how you can use this. One of the really cool things that I've been using this for is to help me explain ideas in simple terms. So, so can you explain how an internal combustion engine works? Yeah, let's do that. Can you explain how an internal combustion engine works? So here's one of the things that's kind of the biggest downsides of ChatGPT right now. Because it's so popular right now and because it's being used in so many places, it can actually, the website goes down a lot. Typically, you would just go and refresh the page, and hopefully that will help. So can you explain how an internal combustion engine works? Cool. So I personally have always struggled with this, of like, this is like some other form of engineering, but it kind of gives you a nice little outline of exactly what's going on. And so it talks about ignition, compression, power, and so on and so forth. And kind of tells you the process of what's going on. And so then, it says, hey, this is a simplified view. And so what's really cool is that, let's say you're reading this and you don't fully grasp it. What you can do is actually hit generate response. And as we've learned, this is generative. Like, this is not Googling it for some different article in the internet. This is now phrasing it a different way. So if for some reason the first phrasing did not help you, you can tell it to regenerate it and it will help. And it'll help realize what you're talking about. Okay, so it's typing this up. So here's some of my favorite parts about this tool. You can actually have a lot of fun with this. Can you explain that? I'm going to ask you, can you explain that in the style of Eminem? And so, obviously, if you don't know where Eminem, famous rap and hip hop artist. So I'm going to finish. I'm going to wait until it finishes. And then I should be able to. I'm going to hit stop generating. So here is where it actually gets kind of fun. It will make a song about how it does an internal combustion engine works. And if you read it, it actually makes sense. It's in line with how an internal combustion engine works. And it does the rhyming, like the piston goes down, sucking fuel and air, no need to frown. Then comes a compression, pushing it up. Like, it's actually super creative. And you're able to just continue on with this. You can make poems of this. You can use it to write specific, like, hey, give me a short story about an internal combustion engine, and kind of like it allows you to go into this. Some of the examples that when I've even like tried this out, it will give you like verse 1, and then it will give you verse 2, and then chorus. Like, it will actually break it down for you. Again, if I wanted to regenerate it, it kind of goes, it will do an even different kind of a different song. Yeah, so that's kind of like one of the really fun examples. Let's see, the next example kind of wanted to summarize or to give is that you can use this as a translation tool. Obviously, there's Google Translate, but you can use it to really kind of help you give long phrases. How do I ask, where the bathroom is in French? All right, let's do Spanish. And then you can say "Donde está el baño?" And then what's really great about it, it gives you an explanation of each word and each verb that you're doing it. So you're not really just getting the full translation as you would do like with a Google Translate answer. You're actually kind of getting a mini lesson out of this. And I truly see this as a way to really be able to fully grasp a language a lot quicker, a lot harder, a lot quicker, because you're not just getting like something that you can spit out, you're actually learning a little bit as you go. One other really cool thing, so let's say you wanted to summarize an article. So let's just say messy Wikipedia. You can feed it a long string of text, and you can ask it to summarize you. So I'm just going to do right now, I just went to the Wikipedia page for messy. I'm going to take this whole big chunk of text here, and I'm going to say, can you summarize this text into 5 bullet points? And so then I'm just going to feed it the rest. And then it gives me 5 bullet points about that entire article, whatever article you did. And it will just give it right then and there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Yep. And sometimes it might give you more, I will say. There's been times where like it didn't really understand that, okay, I only want 5. But for the most part, there's this just really powerfulness of like, I don't want to read through all this. Give me just the main points. Let me just figure this out. That's probably like, yeah, this has been a really cool tool, again, as a helper. If you don't want to read an entire paper, or you just don't, you want to be able to remind yourself of, hey, what is this about? You can feed in the term, you can feed in a bunch of text, and you'll be able to figure it out. There is a limitation with how many words. I forget exactly how many it is. It's on the order of like 3,000 or 5,000 words. ChatGPT 4, which is the newest model, the one that's paid, I think can do even more than that. But honestly, I think you'll be fine with just giving it a large article of any size, and I think it should be pretty good. Okay, so we're going to do a couple other things here. So here's kind of 3 big points that I wanted to bring. How do you ask effective questions? The first one is be very clear and specific. As you saw into some of my examples, especially like here, where I'm asking for donations for a nonprofit, I said I was a nonprofit leader for high school students, and asking donor for funds for an upcoming conference. It would have been very different to say, can you help me write a donor letter? Can you help me write a donor letter asking, can you help me write a donor letter for our upcoming conference? There's several details here, right? Who am I? Can you do it nicely? This is for high school students, and you're going to get a very different response if you don't be specific. Especially like, hey, I am in. You can, for the travel example that we talked about, you can specify, hey, I am a 30-year-old who loves to hike, and I'm going to be traveling Colombia in August. Where are the exact places that I should go? And the more specific you are, the better your refined answer will be. This second point is actually pretty interesting. I haven't heard a lot of people talk about it much, but as you read through the research, it kind of makes sense. The order of words matter. So the way a lot of this works is that as you're typing in your question, and as you're typing in your question, it is internally filtering where it should go in this huge database. Obviously, remind yourself how this ChatGPT is using a huge database. And so as you're writing, it's kind of like doing the processing as it goes. Here it's saying, can you help me write an email? So at this point, it's already kind of filtering, hey, I need to go into my knowledge database about how to write emails. And then it says to my boss asking, to my boss. So like, okay, you're writing a professional email, you're a worker, I need to think about professional email versus like a marketing email or something like that. Asking for a raise. Okay, so you're asking about money. So it filters as you go through. And that is all to say that if you write something and you just don't like the response, just try rephrasing your question. Maybe you didn't pick out the correct words. There's no real set of like rules of what is the best way. What I've told people is start with being a generic thing and then kind of going more specific. But ultimately, a lot of that is kind of built within the mathematical models, which aren't really publicized, or like we really don't know exactly what's going on. But that is all to say, the order of words matter, and therefore, if you get something that you don't really like, just rephrase it. Okay, and then second of all, finally, break down your query into several questions. So if you think back about that prom example, I said, can you give me any ideas for asking a girl to the prom? I wanted to find a good way to ask out a girl to a prom and kind of the steps to do that. So, I basically just had a conversation. That first one didn't give me what I wanted, but I said, can you give me a more creative ways to do this? Can you give me some more ideas? Can you give me something more simple? And you can even say, hey, can you give me your top 3 ideas or whatever? Use this. This is, again, a big difference between Google and this is you're just using this as a conversation, where you're kind of just, you're talking to a human, more or less. And you're like wanting to find out more and like, just give me more examples. Can you be more specific, and so on and so forth. Okay, finally, since we're almost out of time, but I wanted to make sure that we're going good with this. Here's the level 3 examples, and then here's where you can kind of, this gets really kind of crazy. So you can use it to write an entire script. So write a horror movie script where zombies are taking over Northwestern, my alma mater, Northwestern University. And so this will start writing out the first act, and it will be giving a very detailed kind of like setting the scene. And then it says, okay, here is James, and kind of giving you a little bit more of what is going on. So a couple of things about this. depending on how much you want, you can ask it for more. So for example, in here, we're only seeing Act 1, Act 2, and then Act 3. This is generating right now, but once it stops generating, I can ask it, hey, can you give me the first 2 pages of the script for Act 1? And it will give you some example. Some notes to think, though, with these type of examples is that we have seen that like a very long future full story might start to lose its plot, maybe halfway. So again, this is being more cognizant of what this could be. Don't fully take it on its own. But again, this is a tool to help you generate ideas. It could give you the full script, but honestly, this is what you should take and like, hey, I'm going to start this and be able to write the rest of the script. Coding. So this is the big thing going on right now. There's a lot of talk of how this is going to replace software engineering. I personally do not think so, mostly because it can do a lot, but for a lot of the examples I've seen in like harder coding scenarios, it does need a little guidance of how to solve a problem. But if you wanted to learn how to write Python or something, can you write a Python script that looks through, let's say looks through some folders and finds all the Excel files with the letter, with the name motor. This particular example, actually, I did use into some of my work, where I was like, you know what, I needed to write something up dealing with a motor, which was not my main task. But then I had to like look through, like, I had to search through all these folders for like these files. So instead of like going manually and looking through a folder, I just asked ChatGPT, like, hey, can you write me a quick script? And so I was like, yeah, sure, here you go. So for those of you who are not within a coding background, Python is a very common script. It's a very common way to write code. It's very simple. And with the beauty, again, of this, you have your code that you can literally like copy and paste into the Python terminal. And the best part about it, just like the translation about it, it says exactly what each line is doing. It says in this script, the OS module is used for handling directory operations. This is the lower and upper, in this case sensitive search, you can convert the search pattern and file names. Basically, it's giving you an explanation of how this code works. And it actually even says, let me know if you have any questions or need further assistance. And then I guess, yeah, right now, as you can see, ChatGPT is not perfect. It is still kind of like in the works, but this particular example I have used of like, I just need something quick. It's not the main, I could go through these files manually, but let's see if there's a quick way to do this. The final example I'll give, well, actually, I'll give you 2 more examples. This one is, you can use it to plan out your meals for the week. So I am on a 2,000 calorie diet. Can you help plan out my meals for the week? I am a vegetarian, and let's say I am a vegetarian and I love Mediterranean food. If I can spell that. We'll do and I love Spanish food, since I can spell that. So it will actually give you, and so a couple of things. One, I was very specific, the calories, the type of dietary restrictions I have, and anything to go with it. And it kind of goes through day 1, day 2, giving you everything that you need to do for all of this. Honestly, I've used this in a couple of different examples of different dietary restrictions, different calorie diets, and it does a really good job of giving you various examples of different things. As you can see, it's not a very It doesn't do the same thing twice, as far as I can tell quickly. It gives you a nice variation of all this. So the really powerful part about this, again, you're having a conversation. Can you give me a recipe for the breakfast meal for the first day? And so once it stops generating, I'll just kind of toss that in. Again, this is so that this is again explaining how this is so much more different from Google because you can have a conversation. So if I say, can you give me a recipe? So it says, here's that Spanish style omelet that I described in the first day. And then it gives you your ingredients and your instructions. And all this is kind of pretty crazy and pretty awesome. And you'll be surprised with what comes up. So we're kind of running out of time. I'm going to stop for Q&A. I think the biggest thing I want you to just take away from this is the next time you're thinking about something, instead of going to Google, try to see if you can find your answer on ChatGPT and see what you would get. I think you'll be pretty impressed with what you see. But let me know what you guys think. I'm gonna open it up for any questions right now. I know we're almost out of time, but I'm happy to stay over past the hour. I'm gonna stop screen sharing. Where is this? Stop screen sharing. Oh, here we go. Okay, so any questions from anyone? I see in the chat, do you know if there are any in-person workshops for this program? I don't know at the moment. I'm assuming you mean, it's some company putting on together a program to learn about this. Not that I know of. I love talking about this stuff, so I'm happy to just throw in my email and I can show you more. I also, just as a shameless plug, I do have a YouTube channel that kind of goes through all of this even more, kind of goes through these examples, and I plan to make more. So if that's something that is interesting. Yeah. The interesting thing I'll add to that is there are companies that are starting to, as not a job requirement, but as a job plus, if you know how to use ChatGPT effectively. There's actually this startup in Japan that part of the interview process is asking you how to use ChatGPT, or gives you some prompts for how to make ChatGPT. Any other questions, whether in the chat or you can put yourself off of mute? You're welcome. Happy to share some knowledge. I was going to dive into even more technical stuff, but I was like, no, let's just get through them. Let's just go through as many examples as we can. I think I lost the chat real quick. Maybe I should offer a workshop. Sure. Well, stay tuned. Stay tuned for anything going on that. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen one more time just to. Cool. Let me do. So this is all to say thank you for joining. I hope you did learn something. I'm going to toss in my email into the chat right now. Cristian, I actually don't even. Let me. So I'm happy to answer any questions offline. This is just the first series of our alumni talks. Again, we have various alumni talking about different topics. Just to give you a plug of what's coming up for Mass Youth Leadership, we had the talk today. We will have an in-person fundraiser. We are thinking about a brewery in the early May timeframe. So just stick around if you are looking to help us out. If you like this type of programming and if you want to see more of it, again, all of this is like, none of us get paid to put on these presentations. No one here in this organization gets paid to put all these wonderful programming for our students. So we're always looking to put as much programming, but it all takes money. So we always have fundraisers. If you want to learn more about us and want to know anything that's coming up, this is the calendar to go to. That in-person fundraiser will be a lot of fun. And then we have our major Mass Start conference in June for high school students. But that's my plug-in for that. But without further ado, I mean, hopefully you got something out of this, and happy to stay around and chat more. But until then, thank you for joining, and I'll hope to catch you guys in the next one.